Okay, folks, so I would like to welcome you to the 2024 Empowering Inclusion Panel. This month actually is our Disability Month, so we really value the time that you've taken to be here today. Next slide, please, Livio. So just to give you a little bit of information in regards to WorkBC. So we are the WorkBC Centre currently running from the North Vancouver Tri-Cities and Vancouver South location. As many of you are aware, we do fully support Disability Month in the month of September. I would like to just respectfully acknowledge that our main office of many other programs are located in the traditional, ancestral and unceded territory of Coquitlam, Musqueam and Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations, that our work across British Columbia spans the territories of more than 200 nations. Next slide, please, Livio. So just to give you a little bit of an agenda this morning, again, first of all, so for many of you that are arriving a little bit late, that's fine. Just wanted to just provide you a little bit of an agenda. We will be providing introductions, a little bit of information regarding WorkBC, and then we'll kick off into our Empowering Inclusion panel, followed by Q&A. What we will request for Q&A is that we just ask you to put your questions in the chat, and this will give our wonderful moderator, Nate, the opportunity to be able to coordinate that to the relevant service providers or employers, and that will be at the end of the panel around 11:30, 12. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just as a very quick introduction, I would like to take the time to introduce you to our employer panel. We have Nate Toevs. He's the employer outreach developer from Neil Squire. Trusted Nate. He's fantastic and has been with Neil Squire for a very long time in the sector. And we have, I'm not sure if Ariane Joel from POM Natural Market is present. We have Judith Castillo, owner and operator of Tri-Cities Cleaning. Thank you, Judith, for being here. We have myself. I'm Louise Roberts, Customized Employment Specialist here at WorkBC. Mike Taculad, a team leader of vocational services from the BC Centre for Ability. Sarah Macy, owner and operator from the South Delta Physiotherapy Clinic. And then last but not least, Yat Lee, the Associate Director from the Accessible Employers Group. Next slide, please.
Meet Deepa and Sophia, job seekers in Metro Vancouver. They've both been actively applying for jobs since they got laid off a few months ago. They're feeling stressed, dejected, and frustrated because they haven't heard back about any of the applications they've submitted. Deepa learns about WorkBC through social media and decides to contact her local WorkBC Centre because she's curious about how they can help her find work. Deepa meets the eligibility requirements, and after a quick assessment, she starts accessing free employment services. She gets her own career advisor who helps her to navigate WorkBC services and refers her to a career planning workshop series to help her decide on her career goals. After that, she's able to access WorkBC funding to attend a computer training course to update her skills. Next, her career advisor helps her to polish her resume, practice for job interviews, and network with other WorkBC participants. Meanwhile, Sophia continues to apply for jobs online at home. She's getting even more frustrated and starts doubting herself and her skills. While Sophia's solo job search trudges on with little success, Deepa begins working with a WorkBC placement specialist who puts her in touch with a hiring manager at a company who's looking for someone like her. Finally, Deepa gets hired by the employer she met through WorkBC. She's ecstatic that she found work in her field that matches up with her skills and experience. What are you waiting for? Contact your local WorkBC Centre today. All our services are free, and this program is funded by the Government of Canada and the Province of British Columbia. There's a WorkBC Centre in your neighbourhood. Find your local WorkBC Centre at workbccentres.ca.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So as mentioned, WorkBC services are provided for individuals that do seek job search services. And we have 7 locations actually across the Lower Mainland, North Van, Burrard, West Broadway, Cranby. Next slide, please, Livio. And then the Tri-Cities, so that's Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam and Port Moody. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a little bit of information in terms of customized employment. So customized employment really is a very flexible process that matches the client's strengths and really focuses on matching those requirements of the job to the client's strength by an individual process by the name of job carving. So that basically means that we're really understanding the strength of the client to be able to really approach the employer community and provide detailed information as to what that client's strengths, needs and interests are. We really work very closely with the client to ensure that sustainability is very important. And so if you are an individual that identifies with having a disability and you do feel that you'd benefit from an individualized supported assistant program, please do reach out to us. We have been very successful. Our clients are very successful in securing and maintaining job support, and we've had many successes. We also have many services within customized employment as well that supports the client transition successfully, including resources available as well as financial support, job start supports as well. Next slide, please, Livio. So without further ado, I can answer any questions. There will be my slide actually at the end of the PowerPoint presentation, but I do encourage you to reach out to your local WorkBC. We are able to do an intake. And these steps would actually refer to being meeting a case manager that will do an initial intake to be able to refer you to one of our customized employment specialists. My favorite part of the role, obviously, is what we call the discovery process, where we're able to really ascertain the strengths of the clients, really understand their needs and their interests for them to be successful in the workplace. Based on that information, we'll be able to provide recommendations on the client's potential job opportunities. At that point, we're doing our best to tailor those strengths to the need of both the client and the employer to support them with job placement. And then from there, we're able to offer job coaching, sustainability support, which means that one of the customized team are able to go in to the workplace just to navigate any additional training that they may be required, any interviews, or any, like I say, any financial support and resources that we can provide as well. Next slide, please, Livio. As I say, my name is Louise Roberts. I am one of 3 customized employment specialists, but I am based here in the Tri-Cities. I'm more than happy to have any questions. Please direct them directly to me. Feel free to send me an email and I can get back to you with any questions that you may have. We're always happy to provide as much support as we possibly can here at the WorkBC centres. So without further ado, I would like to hand the baton over to Nate, who is going to be moderating our event. And again, thank you so much for being here today. Thanks, Nate.
Well, thank you, Louise. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here with everybody and, share and learn and together. Really pleased for the opportunity to have so many amazing people on the call today. Wow, 48. That is outstanding, wonderful job, Team WorkBC. We couldn't do this without you, that's for sure. I think the best place to start is let's just quickly, everybody, just do a little, 15, 20 seconds. What do you love about your role the most, whether you're a service provider or whether you're working in the industry from a support perspective like Yat and myself. Yat, let's start it off with you. 15, 20, 30 seconds. What do you love most about what you do in the industry?
Thank you, Nate. My name is Yata. I just love being able to work with employers to champion inclusive workplaces. I love seeing them hire people with disabilities, and I love the fact, they understand that hiring people with disabilities is good for their business.
Excellent. Mike.
Yeah, Mike from BC Center for Ability. I just love discovering new personalities, like meeting new people, whether they're clients I'm working with, discovering new employers, discovering new community partners. There's so much to learn out there.
Excellent. Sarah, from an employer's perspective, and as a physio, you've worked with people of all sorts of abilities and disabilities. What do you enjoy the most about helping somebody minimize or overcome some of the life and work-related challenges they're dealing with?
Thank you. Yeah, I love inclusion. So I think of any group, a business, a school, a workplace, as a part of the world that has different cultures, different ages, and different abilities. And I just like reflecting that everywhere we go and not having groups of people that are really homogeneous. So I love inclusion and diversity. Thanks.
And wonderful answer. And Judith, thanks for joining us today. It was nice to see you last week in Coquitlam. Tell us a little bit about what you love the most about hiring somebody that may have a barrier, but you watch them show you all their abilities and not disabilities.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this invitation. My name is Judith Castillo. And in Tri-Cities Cleaning Services, we've been providing services over 14 years in our community. What we do residential and commercial cleaning. And as I say here, we love to take care of your business and your families. We like to help families to live well and organized. But also, I believe in collaboration. I believe in make our community better and strong. That's why I collaborate with programs like WorkBC. And I believe that everybody deserves an opportunity, and especially people with disabilities. That is why I like to collaborate in my community.
Right on. Wonderful. For me, what I've seen is I've seen the focus on ability. There's all of us have things we can't do. Some people with disabilities or barriers have some areas where they may struggle to accomplish something, but they find a way. They reinvent different ways to accomplish tasks. In the role that we have in this program at Neil Squire is assistive technologies, helping somebody use a tool that can help minimize or overcome a work-related barrier. And I just love the imagination, the fortitude, the never give up attitude that I've seen in my 9+ years of the work that I do. And it's absolutely inspiring. So super glad to be here. So let's get it kicked off. Yeah, tell us a little bit about inclusion in the workplace, some of the work your organization is doing, and how that really plays into the month we're just about done with, Disability Employment Awareness Month here in British Columbia.
Thank you, Nate, for the kind introduction. My name is Yat. My pronouns are he, him. I'm calling in from the ancestral and unceded homelands of the Hunkaminam and Squamish-speaking peoples in the city of Burnaby. I am really privileged and grateful to live, work, and play here. As a person who self-identifies with disabilities, I also work for an organization that champions inclusive workplaces, and that's Accessible Employers. We are an initiative from the President's Group, who is an advisory committee of 25 CEOs in British Columbia that work together to eliminate barriers and to create accessible workplaces. And recognizing that September is Disability Employment Month in BC, this is a particularly important month for us and for many of our organizations, especially employers in British Columbia. We serve and we offer resources to British Columbians. But perhaps I might be able to steer our conversation this morning towards some data, some numbers that might help us ground our conversation this morning. As of now, 773,000 working age British Columbians between the ages of 15 to 64 have a disability. And when this number is so high, is so prominent, the work that we do today at Accessible Employers and with our inclusive employers whom are on this call today and with you is so important. And that means many people whom self-identify with disabilities could have work potential that have stopped working due to attitudinal barriers like stigma and repeated rejection, as well as physical barriers that restrict access to certain jobs or workplaces. So my job at Accessible Employers is to ensure the employers have the right resources to remove these barriers, to remove stigmas when it comes to recruitment, when it comes to retention. So, you know, of course, as we'll converse throughout the day, there are many, many benefits of hiring people with disabilities, Nate.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, from the perspective of BC Centre for Ability, tell me about some of the work your organization is doing as it relates to helping people minimize or overcome barriers, and how has that played into September for the people at BC Centre for Ability?
Hi, sorry about that. I'm not sure if it's my system or I don't seem to be able to unmute myself when clicking this. But yeah, so for this month, you know, BC Center for Ability, we're not the main player. We're not the main organization when it comes to vocational services for persons with disabilities. We really rely on our partnerships like, you know, with Neil Squire, with Open Door Group, and Unity, Wise Employment. I know some of them are here, so shout out to Anna Rude, Seema, and Victoria, all of the friends there, and other organizations like Community Living Society. And most important partner for us actually is WorkBC. Because we serve the Lower Mainland, we have connections with all of the WorkBC offices. You know, so we're more of a partner organization, and we're more of a resource organization in that manner. There may be some clients, what we call clients, who are basically persons with disabilities who are looking for work. Sometimes they may be eligible for certain programs, but sometimes they are not. So when Service Canada, like they put it this way to us one time on how we can describe our services. Not that we're going to put this in our marketing material, but we're sort of one of the last resorts for a person with disability. So when they go to WorkBC, when they go to other organizations and there's funding needed, whether it's for training, accessibility, adaptive equipment, wage subsidies, if all the other organizations are unable to provide it, then those clients can come to us. So that's one of the roles that we play. We support other community partners, but we also want to be engaging employers as well in our local area in the Lower Mainland, raising awareness about hiring persons with disabilities.
Yeah, you know, excellent work there, and it is a big part of the work that many of the service providers are doing is, well, sometimes we have to say no. What we prefer to say is no, not us, but these folks over here, this organization over there. Have you looked at this program? And many of the organizations that we partner with, we supported referrals to make sure that we can help a client navigate sometimes the challenging aspects of disability and finding quality employment and getting the resources they need. Okay, let's move to a couple employer type questions. Judith, let's start with you. From a perspective as an employer.
Yes, Neil. For our company, it's been a really important to collaborate with organizations at WorkBC. And in my case, as a business owner, I had a special my friend have a son that was completely healthy and happy, and unfortunately after a surgery and a treatment in his heart, he started having challenge in his life. So that opened my mind to see how a normal person can in a second to be changing his life in that sense. And he's a really close friend to my son. So that opened my heart to be open to receive people that sometimes are passing and having circumstances that are being difficult, but they really wanted to be part of our community and our society. So in my experience, it's been really rewarding to be collaborating and empower people that are in that circumstance. And I am so glad that in our society, in our system, in organizations like WorkBC or Neil, in your own organization that you are collaborating, they facilitate and help these people in that process. These people, I mean, people that need that assistance. And that is the reason I was open, and I is still open. And I've been so grateful because Louise was one of the first mentors that I have in this process. And I found a really good employee that facilitated me. And I was like the bridge as a company to thankful to that customer that trusts me enough that my company will provide the same service, because we did the training, we did encourage this person, and they are able to cover the needs that this company have. So I encourage everyone that is listening today and is being part of this panel that own a company to be open to collaborate and support like a person, like
Yes.
the friend of my son. That is for me. That's why I am
Yes.
here today.
Wonderful.
Judith,
So-
sorry to interrupt, Nate. Judith, just on that, can you tell everybody how long that employee was actually with you at Tri-Cities Cleaning? Was it 4 or 5 years?
For almost 5 years, one
Yeah.
of the employers, she was working with us, and really she was feeling more confident. She started with 3 to 6 hours a week, and later she started being more active, like 9 hours, 10. And she started with us for 5 years. She's still in touch with us. He moved with his parents to Calgary, but it's one of really successful cases that we have in our company.
Wow. You know, I say in many speaking engagements that I have, and sorry, I'm having issues with my headphones, so I've had to go to unplug them. So I hope my audio is still okay. You know, you'll often hear me say that in a room, especially in a room with 44 people in it, like we have right now, there'll be people from many different communities. There'll be people from many communities from around the world. There'll be people from the First Nations communities. There'll be people from the LGBT community, and there'll be people with disabilities. But the disability community is the only one that you can join involuntarily at any time. And it can happen to anybody, like Judith said, in the blink of an eye. So we're blessed to be able to be here to support people. Sarah, you know, again, from an employer standpoint, tell us a little bit about some of your journey from a diversity and inclusion standpoint, please.
Sure, thanks. Well, being part of a small community, we really wanted to highlight that we were, inviting. And so when the opportunity came that we were approached to have somebody on our staff that needed a support person with them, we decided to give it a shot. And I think what really stood out for me from that experience was that they had a support person that knew their strengths and their challenges, and we had a lead person in the company willing to kind of follow their plan and be their support person when they arrived at work. So for me, that was really critical. If that person had come sort of just on their own and we didn't really know who was on shift with them, it would have failed miserably. So I think the support person on both ends, coming with that person from an organization like yours and a person in the employment, that really made a difference. For me as a mom of kids that are autistic and looking for work now at this stage in their lives, it's been an interesting challenge to figure out how to give the employer some tips about my kids, but I can't because, they are adults. So I sort of am trying, even though, part of their disability is communication, I'm trying to give them some kind of skills and to decide at what point, and this is a reality, at what point do you disclose? Do you go into the interview so that they can see that you're kind of a nice person and then disclose? Or do you disclose on your resume, right in the application document? I'm not sure what the answer to that is, and I bet there's some people here that could weigh in and help us navigate that, as this is a real life thing for us right now. You know, my kids have so many skills, but it's nearly like you need to kind of encourage them to point them out, because their challenges are going to make it you know, hard for them if the employer doesn't know. If they don't know that they're going to need a sensory break and it looks like they're just tuning out, that's not going to look good. But if the employer knows, or if they have a support person there, a person they can go to and explain it, then everybody can kind of get to know each other and get to see. But yeah, it is a difficult landscape to navigate when you're not sure about disclosure.
Yeah, you know, 100%. And at Neil Squire, from an overarching standpoint, we believe obviously it is the individual's right to disclose. They never have to disclose their disability, but they would disclose what they need in the way of an accommodation. But you know, right under that, we believe in that disclosure, and when that conversation can happen, and the world is changing, and these discussions are happening more today than they did 5 years ago. That does open up the door for an accommodation, and there's so many different technologies today that can help accommodate that. And speaking of accommodations and disclosure, yeah, let's go to you. You have some experience with that. Share with us your thoughts on disclosing and how that can open up the conversation between the individual and the employer that create magic, quite frankly.
There's oftentimes a stigma when it comes to self-disclosure. The stigma revolves around fear of potentially being seen as someone who is unable to do their job because they have requested for accommodation or adjustment. There's fear of losing their jobs. There's fear of perhaps even at the recruitment level, at the application level, if when you apply and self-disclose at the application journey, that you might be seen as someone whom require accommodations to do the job. Therefore, you may not be hired because of it. But those are all of these stigmas that we have to break, and the layers that we have to unlock. And interestingly enough, in our research, to help cover the cost of necessary accommodations, Canadian employers do have access to fundings from federal and provincial governments, as well as various organizations to help support this. For example, at Small Business BC, there is a fund that can help, a grant that supports small businesses to offer accommodations when it comes to lighting, when it comes to physical barriers, when it comes to even training in the job site. And the best thing is that, you know, organizations did see an economic benefit of 2 to 7 times the cost of accommodation for employees with various disabilities. Organizations also saw that when they hire people with disabilities, they're 2 times more likely to meet or exceed their financial targets. So all of that is to say that, you know, yes, self-disclosure is important to have that discussion, but more so is recognizing the inclusive employers that are out there whom are actively looking to hire and retain talent, people, especially people with disabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know the President's Group, accessibleemployers.ca, has some wonderful resources. And one of the ways that employers can attract people with disabilities and encourage them to disclose is in how they write their ads. Mike, does BC Centre for Ability do you have something to say about how somebody might put together an ad that would encourage somebody that, hey, we're looking for people with disabilities or barriers, and we'd love for you to disclose whether it creates a barrier to the application process, the interview process, or the eventual role that you may find with our organization? What are your thoughts there?
You know, definitely, that's a really good point, Nate. Recently, with the federal regulations around Accessibility Canada Act and the Accessibility BC Act, many employers have been calling us and inquiring about that. And a big part of the Accessibility Act has to do with making your recruitment process accessible from the beginning of a recruitment process to the end. So meaning from when you come up with a job description until and then it evolves into a job posting up until your recruitment interview process and then offer of employment. So within the life cycle of that recruitment, accessibility has to be offered. But when you mandate something, it's never a good feeling. Mandatory is not something that you celebrate. So many employers have a very negative connotation, like they're being forced to do it. But the big picture thinking and what we try to do with BC Center for Ability, in collaboration with our community partners, always in collaboration with our community partners, is to engage the employers and let them know the benefits of hiring a person with a disability. I mean, sure, there are some parameters around when you have a job posting, like you should put down that you will offer accommodation for anyone who requests it. So whether it's in the job posting or even when you invite them to an interview, you have to remind the applicant again that, yes, if you need accommodations, we will be able to accommodate that. And but the other thing that employers often kind of wonder about is that, I have to offer accommodations. How much is this going to cost me? So the cost is always in the back of their minds. So, and Nate, you mentioned it already, and it was a good point that, 5 years ago, there's not a lot known or talked about when it comes to accommodations, and there's a lot of misconceptions about it. But we have organizations that are put in place that are funded to help fund accommodations, whether it's like sign language interpreting, whether it's like assistive device or something like that. There are many organizations in the province that can help employers. So for us, our job is to just make employers aware that, hey, you're not alone. There's funding available. We'll be there to help you out.
Sure glad you said that, Mike, because one of the great ways that we can help with that is Neil Squire is the sole contractor in British Columbia for the WorkBC Assistive Technology Services Program. So who do you know seeking employment through WorkBC? If they have a barrier to job search or a training program or the eventual job they secure, that's exactly what we're going to do, is get an assessment for that individual, understand their disability and their abilities, and fill that gap of their barrier to their work or training related activities with assistive technologies. And the other group that may qualify are people that are in the workforce. They also can apply to WorkBC Assistive Technology Services. We're looking for folks that are working in a small business or self-employed, because every employer, large or small, has a duty to accommodate, but the smaller employers are likely to have that it may create an undue hardship. And if in that scenario, we fill that gap. So who do you know with a barrier? They're in the workforce, part-time, full-time, or self-employed, and they need a tool, an accommodation. The WorkBC Assistive Technology Program might be able to help. Now, my friend Yat has put some stats. 58% of accommodations cost nothing at all, and 37% require one-time expense of about $500. That's exactly right. The barrier for a lot of the small businesses isn't the $500, it's the assessment. And that part of the program in the ATS Assistive Technology Services Program is always fully funded. And that's, again, where we make that biggest impact for employers. Sarah and Judith, I'm going to get you to comment on this. When did you become aware of the different service providers that could help in inclusive hiring? And if so, what was that number one thing that those groups brought to the table for you? Let's start with you, Sarah.
My answer is going to be really short. I have been unaware, and I'm learning today. So
okay,
thank you.
Excellent. Well, we got some wonderful people on the call. I see the folks at Unity. I see the folks from the Canucks Autism Network, obviously WorkBC. I see my friend Christian from Canadian Mental Health. There's, for the employers on the call today, there's so many resources that are paid with your tax dollars that'll help you minimize or overcome barriers, help you get access to quality team members that, yes, they may have a barrier, they may have a disability, they have way more abilities and disabilities. So engage with them. And Sarah, I'm sure glad you said that, because that is one of the biggest challenges we deal with, is the lack of awareness for employers in these programs. Judith, how about you? When did you become aware? You told a wonderful story of your son's friend, but before that or now, are you aware of all these other different service providers as well? And what do they bring to the table from your perspective?
I've been fortunate enough to be working in these programs for more than 5 years. And I noticed, like, Louise was the first person that introduced me to these organizations, and have a really good experience with WorkBC. And after, in another event with the Chamber of Commerce, I was introduced to you, Neil. And also I know that your organization provide that assessments, and they provide that fundraiser, like funding for the people with disabilities to be employer, and also do a proper work. So I've been aware through the information in my community, and I highly recommend to any of the business owners that are in this panel today that do the call, ask all your questions, have a meeting one-to-one with each of these organizations, and find what is the best match for you and what your company needs. For me, the more important is that we integrate, we collaborate, but also safety, because we are doing cleaning and maintenance. So for me, that was key. And that's why I choose to work with certain of organization, especially, but in any case can be different, you know?
Right on. And so because every individual is an individual, and their barrier disability might be just a little different than somebody else that has a very similar situation. And then their job might be a little different than somebody that's working in a similar job. Marissa, we're going to make sure we get back to your question in the Q&A. I've been in this role for 10 years, and I do work for Neil Squire, but my name's Nate. But you know what? I get called Neil every week. And this week it's been about 3 or 4 times, and I'm honored to be called Neil because he was a great guy. You all might remember a pandemic that swept the globe a couple of years ago. We're kind of on the other side of it. I don't know if we're out of the woods yet. That COVID keeps coming back, but what impact has the pandemic had on the conversation of inclusive hiring, especially as it relates to remote work options? And what's maybe the positive, and if there's anything that's a detraction in that as well?
Great question, Nate. Quote unquote Neil, right? Fourth time now. Oh boy. Employees with disabilities can really help businesses adjust to the pandemic. Obviously, the pandemic has shifted the landscape and the economy, and especially the labor market, quite significantly. As of now, over 207,000 Canadians with a disability are not in the labor force, but want to work. In British Columbia, 64,000, nearly 65,000 of them with a disability want to work but are unemployed. And that is, potentially significantly higher now because of the onset of the pandemic. And there are innovations that employers can take on to make their workplaces more adaptable to overcome barriers. And we have to recognize that the pandemic has shown that accommodations aren't difficult and they benefit employers. So as I mentioned, providing accommodations such as training, providing accommodations such as enlarged keyboards, or perhaps tools to help magnify your screen for people with vision loss or low vision are really inexpensive investments. And also, we've seen that with the onset of the pandemic, that working from home is one of the most common accommodation requests. And we now know that it is practical for many, many jobs. We're seeing a hybrid mix these days. We're seeing a good amount of folks working from home and have seen really great benefits of it. And there's also an opportunity for employers to provide temporary, flexible opportunities as well too, as not everyone with disabilities may want to be in a full-time role as well too, because of various conditions or situations or just personal interest. And that's why being an employer, being able to offer part-time, flexible, casual positions can certainly help that as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I love what you said there. Not everybody wants to work full-time. And while not for everybody, for some of the people that we work with disabilities, getting to and from the workplace can be the biggest barrier. And remote work can absolutely be a game changer for that. Mike, really the same questions. What are your thoughts on that? What would you add to what Yat said?
Yeah, in terms of the pandemic, do we want to go through it all over again? Probably not. But we've learned a lot from it. I think a lot of employers have realized, it's kind of forced employers to realize that, wow, you know what? This job does not have to be done in the office or in the warehouse. You don't have to come to, where your place of employment is, that a lot of work can be done at home. And I think for many kinds of, like depending on people's personality types too, there are some who are just simply more productive working from home. And I think a lot of employers have noticed that, wow, this has really benefited my organization because you've seen an increase in sales and driving up your profits by allowing and enabling people to work from home. So it definitely has had some many advantages. And for people with disabilities, where barriers for them sometimes can be, let's say, transportation, or maybe they have some social anxieties, all of that social interaction triggers something in them. This is quite a positive move for them. And you're right, like I think it's to our benefit as a society when we have the government policies put in place, putting funding into helping employers make a lot of the work transition to work from home or hybrid. It's very advantageous for us.
Yeah, 100%. And the journey continues, and we keep learning more all the time. And with technology and new things like virtual reality and augmented reality and AI, the capabilities of all of us just keep expanding all the time. And I think we're really just getting started on some of that, the aspect of working from different places than a traditional office environment. I'm going to go back to Judith and Sarah now. Judith, when you first started working with somebody with a disability or barrier, what were some of your fears or concerns that you experienced and encountered when you started first working towards greater inclusion? And then maybe what were some of those fears eliminated because of what actually took place?
For me, it was really important to maintain the quality of service to my customers. So I first approached 3 customers, buildings, offices, and lawyers, dentists that we've been working in the community. And I mentioned it, how they will feel about if we had somebody with special needs collaborating with us. And their worry was the quality of the service. So in this conversation with my customers, before I committed to one of these organizations, I choose one because they were more open and kind towards to work in the process. So for me, it was important to find the right candidate in my customers. So I found that building, and the location was easy to get access, because the people sometimes when they start, they need to be having a good access and good hours for work, like make it easy for both parts. So I choose one customer, and that was for me really important, to keep all the time a good quality, but also have this person that will be part of my team to be properly trained. So I really talked to Louise. We had 2 meetings, and I say, I need somebody that will support me in this process. And I was so pleased because she personally was working like for 2 weeks, hand to hand with the person on site. And for my company also, I have somebody that trained this person, like explaining everything technically, like the daily routine, what we do in the building, what is Monday, Wednesday, and Saturdays needs to be done. So, but also Louise was in the part working about, with Paula was the person that we hired, and she was with us for almost 5 years, to make her more comfortable and work with her in her process. So I think that made us really successful in this case. And also I've been working with other, collaborating with other agencies. And with the experience I have with Liz, I request the same. And when I notice they are open to do that process of training and be on site with the person that will be part of my team, I hired people, and it's been like more than 4 people in my team in all these years that I've been part of these programs. So find a good customer that is willing to take and open that door for people with disabilities, and also find that agency that is willing to provide the support in that process. That in my case, for the type of service that we offer, needs to be between 1 or 2 weeks, basically.
Right. Yeah.
But I never like the word fear. I believe more in empowerment and in how we empower our community and how we empower our employees, how we empower our customers to collaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. And wonderful, wonderful answer. And certainly what we've learned in this journey, and, you know, already let us know some of the statistics. People with disabilities can do the job, right? And that's the most important thing, because while there might be barriers, there's way more ability than disability. Now, Louise, don't worry, I haven't forgot about you. I got a whole bunch of questions for you written down, but I'm going to go to you with the same question, Louise. You've worked with multiple employers for several years now, and what are some of the stories that you've heard back about, especially when an employer come back and went, wow, why haven't I done this before? Because the result has been outstanding. What would you say to that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nate. Thank you. And I just kind of want to just really highlight Tri-Cities Cleaning really initially before I kind of continue that answer. But I think, you know, without divulging too much information, I think what we were able to really do through that discovery process that I was mentioning earlier on was finding that this particular job seeker had a new faith. So she was a new Christian. And having those conversations with Judith around what type of organizations do you have that kind of on a value-based connection would really support her success. So what we were able to really negotiate was Judith had a church that was very, like she said, accessible on a transit line that really embodied this full inclusion piece where the client felt, okay, I'm in my place. I'm with my people, and I'm cleaning in an environment which is very based on my values. And so I think that discovery piece is so important, just going back to the WorkBC services, because, you know, through that process, we're really able to ascertain or understand what their values, what their interests, you know, what type of environments they like to be in for them to be successful. And then that really is the birthplace of what will be successful to that individual. So that's the first piece. And then I think just on that, you know, really that sustainable coaching piece, Nate, is so important. So they are set up for the absolute success, and they are provided, whether that be, you know, a handwritten document that says these are the tasks, these are the hours, these are the bus routes. So it's that incremental detail that we're breaking down the pieces for them so it doesn't feel completely overwhelming. And we're able to kind of coordinate that with the employer so they're on the same page, the client's on the same page. It's just small steps. Yeah. Very small incremental steps for them to be successful. And, you know, and this particular client, yes, you know, there were days that she was overwhelmed. And so having that opportunity to be available, providing her a safe space to be able to communicate that. What does that feel like for you today? Yeah. What services can we do to help? What can I do to support you with some of these feelings? And being that person to journey with them, not necessarily do it for the job for them, but to walk alongside them on that path. Yeah. You know, and as you're telling the story, that the word that comes to me is confidence from both sides. Confident, the confident ability of the individual as they get used to the process and the tasks and the job, and the confidence that builds within the employer or the client when they're like, I don't know why I didn't think this would work. Exactly. Because it's working great. It's working better than I ever expected. And I think, yeah, thanks, Nate. And just on the second part of the question that you asked, sorry, I almost went off topic then. I think because of the success, and the employers are talking about the success of the the clients that they're supporting. At that time, there were employers that were calling the office saying, how do I build inclusive teams? What does this process look like? So, you know, that's a lot of employers are really open to inclusion, but like Yat was saying earlier on, and Matt, it's just that building that level of awareness and that level of education, and having the WorkBC financial support to be able to transition those clients successfully, whether it be resources or the wage subsidy, or the job starts. It's just having those plethora of services that will support the clients through that process.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And Sarah, now I saw you nodding your head. You already mentioned you got a couple adult children trying to get in the workforce or having some success, limited or great success. How would you answer the question that I just gave about what were some of the fears and barriers and concerns that you and the family experienced when these kids started working or they're ready for that journey?
Thanks. I think one of the things that strikes me is this idea of autonomy and self-agency, and how there can be many adults kind of saying like, you should do this or you'll be good at this. And especially for, say, the person who came to our clinic, you know, I wanted to make sure that it was her idea and that she wanted to be there, and that it wasn't really just sort of somebody said this is something that might sort of be a path for you. But I just really wanted to make sure that we always heard from the person what it was that was working for them, and whether this was their passion or not. As Louise said, you know, if somebody was able to be in something that really fit with their values and they were enjoying it, they weren't just sort of being put on a pathway for, you know, for the adults around them to check the box. I think also of somebody in my family who's been employed for a long time with the same organization. And I know there's been, you know, statistics that those hires can be really, really good for retention. And I think a little bit to myself, yeah, but, you know, let's also make sure we give them a career path and a trajectory where they can improve and they can get new skills and they can take diverging paths, as many people like to do in over time in their career. So I think it's just that self-agency, and also encouraging, you know, that person to have a voice as they become more confident. So I liked that confidence piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you put some in the chat about job carving to help employers and the person with the barriers. Tell us a little bit more, explain to the audience that may not understand the term job carving, and where's the value there?
Yeah, you know, sometimes when an employee is with an organization for some time, or perhaps have been there in the beginning, but have an acquired disability and they no longer can fulfill their existing job duties or requirements due to an injury or a disability. Instead of potentially not, you know, laying them off, there's an opportunity for the employer to retain that talent by providing job carving opportunities. Job carving is not new, but it is more prominent in our discussion these days because it's important to retain talent. And one particular example I have is Talia Showers from Canucks Place Hospice. She's a bedside nurse, but because of a disability, she no longer cannot do her job as she could before acquiring the disability. Instead of her being out of a job or a role, Canucks Place Hospice is job carved a new role for Talia. And Talia is able to continue on to do some to maintain her nursing skills, to be able to share her 10 to 15 years of nursing skills with others, while still being able to produce and being able to work with the organization, especially retaining that institutional knowledge. I'm happy to share that video link as well too, because we did an interview with Talia Showers. It's an incredible story. But job carving is an incredible opportunity for employers to retain, but also to not only retain, but to, like Sarah mentioned, retain so that they can continue to be as effective as they could, but potentially use it as an opportunity to go, you know, to maintain and gain that confidence back as well too.
Fantastic answer, because what we've seen many times, right, is somebody may no longer be able to do their old job because of a situation, but that doesn't mean that they weren't able to train. That doesn't mean that all that knowledge that they have can't be shared with others in so many different ways. It could be in creating policy. It could be in creating new strategies. It could be used that knowledge can be used in so many other ways. And that was a perfect example. Louise, you and I have known each other for quite a few years now in this WorkBC ecosystem that we're both involved in. What do you see as some of the biggest differences in the last 5 years?
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen, you know, a real shift in the labor market, right? And I think definitely what I am seeing is employers are definitely open to having those conversations because of the retention challenges that they face around finding good people and keeping good people, basically. So I think definitely what I'm seeing is a very change in the labour market and employers really being open to having those conversations to discuss how can we build diversity in our teams. You see a lot more organisations building DEI initiatives and wanting to learn how to be more inclusive in the environment. I was having a conversation with the city of Coquitlam, and, you know, next year they have a plethora of, you know, new initiatives and plans that they're working on. And so what does that look like? So having those conversations, employers are more open to implementing more diversity and equity and inclusion in their organizations, which is an aha moment for us as service providers, because that's what we want.
Yeah, the marketplace is asking for it.
Yeah.
You know, more and more we see statistics of 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 British Columbians or Canadians have some sort of barrier, whatever that is for them, or disability. You know, if we're in a room with 100 people, there's 20 people, and maybe not all 20 are going to disclose, and maybe they've kept it to themselves, and maybe they've found a way, whatever it is, but they're out there. And I think you're right. We're seeing that more and more. Mike, how would you answer that question? What have you seen in the last 5 years that you would say is a difference from 2019 to 2024?
Yeah, and first of all, like Louise, that was a great answer. I wish that more employers would watch this. You know, and I know you're going to put it up on YouTube. I hope that we get a lot of exposure because that's what reality has been in the last 5 years. The labor market has changed. You're absolutely right. I think even some of the employers that we've been talking to have expressed that whereas before there were some who were kind of like unsure about hiring someone with a disability, now they're being more and more open to it. Just echoing what Louise has mentioned, you know, they see it within themselves, like, you know, they see with retention, and retention costs employers a lot of money. To have to like lose an employee and then go on recruitment. Recruitment costs money. When you put a job posting up, you have to take the time to interview. You have to take the time to go through resumes. All those things that take time cost money. And so every time you lose a person, an employer is losing money. So it's to their best interest that they have a good retention rate within their organizations. And there are so many stats. I'm sure Yat will pull it out, but persons with disabilities, they tend to stay longer in their jobs because once they find their niche, something that they enjoy, something that they were helped to with the help of like an employment counselor at WorkBC or any other partner organization, they discover who they are, what their skills are, what their values are, what their personalities are. Once they find that niche job, they tend to stay there. And I think employers are realizing more and more that there's lots of advantages for hiring a person with disability.
Yeah. The boomers, I'm one of them, born between 1946 and 1964 in North America, 10,000 of them are retiring every day. Sorry, let me restate that. 10,000 of them are turning 65 every day. Some of them are retiring at 55, 60, 65 often, maybe 70. But that's one of the reasons for this exodus of the job market is these people that they've worked their whole life. I'm like a 60. I've worked since I was 12, 48 years. I'm ready. Not quite yet. My employer knows I'm sticking around for a little while, but I'm soon ready to exit the job market and they're going to have to replace me. Yat, the stat man, that's what I'm going to call you when we golf again, buddy. Yat, the stat man, put another stat in there, $4,700 an average to train. It can be much higher than that. To hire and train people is way more expensive in most cases than accommodating their disability. Let's talk about what are the common myths, Judith? Again, you're an employer. You've hired some people. They've, you know, you had mentioned to us, you focus on empowerment. But what are some of the common myths that you've seen maybe in some of the conversations you've had with other employers that you know aren't necessarily true because you've seen the other side of it? But what are some of the common myths or misunderstanding that employers have about hiring inclusively?
Of course, one of the myths is that the safety for their own members or the customers. But I explained to them that if we find the right match or what they are looking in the skills that they are searching for, they can find the right candidate. And regarding to the time of hiring, just coming back to that point, I work and I have a case with a lady that I hired, and she was working, she was integrating, and she was in our company for 6 months with one of the agencies. And she was fitting, but her level of anxiety was getting high. So she decided that even she'd really like to do her daily tasks and be with her company, wasn't the right match. So even that she feels secure and confident, and she applied for a different position. But this transition, these 6 months with us, empowered her to continue with that journey. So, and for me, that was, even for that 6 months, was successful for me to be working with her, you know? Why? Because I noticed how she was growing in that transition, in that period, and how much she grew for this experience. And she was ready to continue her journey. So when I explain some examples and experiences that I have with me with the owners, and I say, so it is a way that we can assist them to be successful. And maybe you need to check if they enjoy to work with people around. So I can send them when it's an office. If they prefer to work alone, so you will send them, in my case, in a place that is, we can give the service after hours, you know? They like family and animals, I can send them maybe to support somebody in a house. You know, depends on the skills and what they are good at, you will find that match. Yeah. So when I explain that to the other employees, but it depends what they are looking for, but it can be administration, can be an assistant, a messenger, so many things. So, but it's a place when you assure to them that if you give one opportunity in your company, it is a place for somebody with disabilities. That is my experience, basically.
Wonderful, wonderful answer as usual, Judith. You know, in my journey, I've heard employers say, well, if I hire somebody with a disability, do I have to get special liability insurance? No. If I hire somebody with a disability, will I pay higher WorkSafe premiums? No. None of that exists. These are all some of the myths that we see. And it is, you know, fear, false expectations that appear real that often stops people from making the step. So Sarah, again, as a mom with, is it 2 children on the spectrum? 4 kids. What are some of the myths that you've seen? And what are some of the, like, we watch TV and we see kids portrayed in different things, and they tend to be maybe portrayed the same. I took an amazing training. Yat knows the lady I'm talking about, Carol Simpson from Focus Disability Networks. And she has 2 adult sons on the spectrum. And one of the things she taught me is if you've met one child on the autism spectrum, you've met one child on the autism spectrum. They're all as individual as everybody else. So Sarah, how would you answer that question as far as the myths that we think about people on the spectrum?
My kids are so different. They're so different. It's exciting. It's exciting to to see them be so different. And while they all have these extra support needs, I feel like it's really doable to find them a place in the world where they're going to feel they can contribute. And one thing I just wanted to mention that I've seen coming along the way is post-secondary education and volunteerism, also feeding the workforce potential of people. So I would just encourage anybody who has influence in post-secondary or in volunteering to make sure that the accommodations happen at that stage as well, to get them prepared for the workforce. One program that one of my kids is applying for is only available in person full time. And it's funny because it's like, how could we make this less bureaucratic? How can we make this more like, she wants to be helping people with disabilities, and she has a disability, and so she wants to go into disability training, but the studies themselves are a barrier. Just as you said, the ability to be flexible, to not work full time, to be able to have time to recover from the overload of being out there in post-secondary education, that is part of it. And the volunteering has just come to light to me because I just became a 50-50 volunteer at Canucks for Kids, and there's many people there with all kinds of needs, and it's such a diverse group. I see the beauty in that, like the experience and the confidence. So I just encourage everybody who's a player in those worlds to help contribute to some training and some success and some experience.
Nice. I love buying 50-50 tickets, Sarah, and I haven't won in a long time. So when I see you, I'm going to buy 50-50 tickets. I know you can't help me win, but I'd like to try. What I love about this panel is you're all doing a wonderful job answering the questions and helping me lead in to my next question. So my good friend, what can the government do that's different than they're doing today that may have a dramatic effect on the entire discussion?
To complement the discussion today, the government has embarked on the accessibility standards and the consultation recently. Just a little bit of background or information about this. There's the accessibility standards framework, and that's called the Accessible BC Act. Just a year and a half ago, there was a development of this standard where the government through a 3 distinct stage process. We'll go through public consultation, we'll review consultation, engage in with the community, and also to develop regulations in the next short while, is to help provide standards for accessible service delivery, standards for employment as well. So some of these examples include, for example, for service delivery, is empowering people with disability and honoring them as experts in their own experience, all the way to removing barriers, all the way to providing training, communications, etc. The government is also very heavily involved when it comes to the employment accessibility standard as well too. They want to make sure that organizations are inclusive, make sure that there's accurate policies, practices, unions, leaves, benefits, compensations. And we recognize that, as we provide consultation through these feedback sessions, is that policies can really show an organization's commitment and intention to this work. So to create an accessible workplace for all, organization policies should support accessibility. And I believe that small organizations and employers will be able to find ways to improve employment access through the standards. So in short, there's a timeline for when organizations need to comply with these proposed recommendations. Those have not been confirmed yet. They're still going through. The consultation feedback was just finalized sometime in end of July. So they're presented to the committee for review right now.
Okay, right on. Louise, how would you answer that question about your work and ours at Neil Squire for the WorkBC program and the Assistive Technology Services program is funded through the Social Development and Poverty Reduction Ministry. What, if anything, could they do immediately that may have a dramatic impact on the people that we serve and the process of finding quality employment?
It's a great question, Nate. I was actually just speaking to one of the parents actually of my clients in regards to this week, and she's very active in her advocacy for her child as to what can she be doing, what more can we do, Louise? And we're having very philosophical conversations around this, which is interesting. But I think it just goes back to that level of education, Nate, right? I think it's a high level conversation that needs to happen. And I think I agree with what Yat was saying, you know, there needs to be more that's being done from a policy procedure perspective, but also just from a, you know, an educational piece, right? The service providers work very diligently to connect the dots, right? But I think there needs to be more. What I have seen though is huge, you know, change, like you were asking about the last 5 years in terms of, you know, I see the government doing a lot more in terms of, you know, we had our employer identified wage subsidies after the pandemic. So I'm seeing a lot more of that, but I think there's definitely a lot more that can be done. And I think just keeping these types of events and conversations flowing will really support with that. Great question. Thanks.
Yeah. And you know, it's not linear.
Absolutely.
Not linear. There's no straight line. There's no one answer for everybody because they are all individuals. And there's many unique challenges and opportunities that both exist. I think the more and more we talk about this, and Yat said it as he usually does so well, involve the individual with the disability. Yes. That's the key piece. They know their abilities and disabilities more than everybody and anyone. Mike, from the standpoint of BC Centre for Ability, what would you say about what could be done differently than we're doing today that could make the biggest difference with some of these, again, the people we serve and that are on the call today?
Yeah, so like, and it's great to have a variety of people on the call today. I think I'll answer that in two ways. Like, so for employers, what can they do? Like for employers, it's very important for them to educate the people who are the hiring decision makers. So whether they have an HR department, they're probably already doing this. If they have a HR department, they have a hiring manager, to make sure they're educated about hiring persons with disabilities. It's funny because like I do talk to many employers, and even recently I talked to someone, I won't name who it is, but I heard the phrase, "Oh, I don't hire those kinds of people." And it kind of surprised me a little bit because, wait, it's year 2024. Why are we still hearing that very prejudiced statement like that? Because it does sometimes happen. It's a very, very minority of the employers, of course. Many of the employers are very open-minded and will talk to us. But it just kind of made an impact on me that like when I do hear that, well, do I put on my advocacy hat? Do I like beat down their doors? Do I take them to the human rights board or something like that? Or do I gain that employer's trust and, you know, let and have them experience the benefits of hiring someone with a disability? Because sometimes even when you know, we're one of the organizations that provide employer awareness workshops. Sometimes there are people who might not say it, but they do, when they hear the word disability, they have they visualize someone maybe on a wheelchair, someone with sign language needs, someone with a cane who has sight loss or something. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but a person with disability, and you mentioned it, Nate, earlier, how, you know, when you meet someone, that's one of one. And it's the same with a disability, you know, not all of them are the same. And the other one I'm going to borrow from what you said, Nate, is like the focus on the ability. If they have the ability to do the job, regardless of their disability, why can't you hire them? So that's one hopefully impactful thing that comes out of this workshop. The other thing is for our clients. We love working with our clients. But like what I'd like to say, and hopefully this makes an impact, is there are jobs out there. The labor market demands workers. For our clients, we just need to help them find their place in the labor market. But it's not all on us. It's not all on the case managers. It's not all on WorkBC, our community partners. For those job seekers, I hope that they take ownership of their own job search. There's a phrase that many of us are aware, but it's called the locus of control. That means like that your own motivation comes from within you. For those who are job seekers, take ownership of your job search. Like know yourself, take advantage of the services to get to know who you are, know your personalities, your skills, your values, what you bring to the table, and ask yourself, why should an employer hire you? Not because of your disability, but because the ability that you bring. How can you help that employer?
Yeah, very well said, Mike. Okay, so we got about 10 minutes left with the this portion of the discussion. Louise, let's start with you. You're on my left side. 2 minutes or less. I haven't asked all the questions because we could be here till tomorrow asking questions and having great comments. What would you add that the audience would want to hear that maybe I've missed, that from maybe a WorkBC perspective, that maybe somebody doesn't know about, whether it's the training or the job search or the carving like we talked about with you? What else would you bring to the table that would talk to this?
Yeah, so all of the above. And I just want to kind of really highlight what Mike said. I mean, we are as service providers trying to empower the clients to have the independence to be able to do these things independently, but we're also journeying with the client in terms of carving opportunities with the employers. It's multifaceted, right? So we're trying to look at where are the client's abilities, what can they bring to this employer, and then really determining where's the gap. What within that organization can benefit the employer, whether that's 3 or 4 tasks, 2 hours a week, 4 hours a week, depending on, you know, the client's comfort levels. Once we can incrementally empower them to make those changes, whether it be through a motivational, what I like to do is the motivational appreciation or motivational inquiry or interviewing is really celebrating the small wins. Like Sarah was mentioning, volunteer opportunities. You know, that might only be a day or 2, but look at how the resilience you've seen the client be able to move forward and be successful in that. When they thought, I can't do this, I'm fearful of doing this and completing it. So they're building that confidence, they're building that resilience. And all of these things are celebrations that we have to encourage along the way, right? So even if they're small incremental steps towards great change, it's great change, right? So it's just honoring the clients where they're at.
Yeah, and you know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And sometimes the journey is long and it isn't linear. And employment isn't linear for any of us.
No, it's not.
I know I was looking for employment at 50. Was very difficult. I found my best job ever, but it took almost 9 months. And I'm grateful to be here. But that period was difficult for me.
Absolutely.
You know, and they say when one door opens, when one door closes, another opens. I'm going to modify that for the listeners today. When one door closes and another one opens, there's that hallway in between that you have to navigate between the two. And that's where the learning opportunities are. That's where the challenges that are presented are there for you to overcome. And there's help out there. And there's many organizations on this call that can bring that help, that assistance, those programs, the knowledge that they hold as knowledge keepers in the disability industry to help you minimize or overcome those barriers, get the tools you need, and that sort of stuff. Yeah, same thing for you. We certainly can't ask all the questions in 60 minutes. What would you add to the discussion today that maybe we haven't covered today, my friend?
We're continuing to work with employers around British Columbia. So far, we have close to 350 employers whom are on our Community of Accessible Employers list. And among those, about 55 have pledged to survey their place of work to determine where they are when it comes to disability inclusion in the workplace. This year, we surveyed close to over 95,000 people who work in British Columbia, and there's I think 8,000 people who self-identify with disabilities, which means that number is continuing to grow. We continue to advocate for employers to hire people with disabilities, and we have a flurry of resources for employers and even for job seekers to come and take a look at our website to identify who these inclusive employers are, so they can look at their career opportunities, their pages, and to learn more if there might be a career fit with these inclusive employers.
Awesome. Mike?
Sorry about that. I keep having a hard time unmuting myself. But also, I'm really enjoying this discussion very, very much. Yeah, so I think, for me, like I said, it's a pleasure for BC Center for Ability to have like these partnerships with WorkBC, Neil Squire, Wise Employment, Connects Autism. Like, we often refer to each other, and I think as a community partners, I don't think we see each other as competition. And I think sometimes employers may, when I contact them, they think, oh, that means I can't contact, say, Canucks Autism or something like that. And I always remind them, we're not in competition. We're all like working together for our clients. We all have a common goal. And I think we already work together. Like, this is a wonderful partnership that we have, like that WorkBC has put together, and it shows how we're kind of unified in our goals. And I think the more we work together as community partners, the more solid we are in how we help our clients, the more the employer community will see that there are tons of support available for them, and hopefully we'll reach more employers and will open more minds to hiring persons with disabilities.
Absolutely. Judith? And then we'll wrap up with Sarah.
I would really like to say thank you for this opportunity. And Louise, Nate, Mike, and Jay, thank you for being open and share your experience as a provider, because you are there for us as an employer. And I really value every step that you are helping us to make that transition easy for our new members in our team, for our company. And the other thing I would like to say is for the business owners, like Sarah and me, that we continue motivating and be open to give that first opportunity. Just start with be open to do a volunteer or one-day training, but give that opportunity, because people need that door open, and it's important that each of us take that responsibility. And if you are listening because you are working with any of these amazing agencies and you are not finding yet that job that is fit in your needs, keep looking. Go to different, search for yourself. It's good opportunities. I encourage you to continue to searching for that job that can match what you need, because this society needs to be integrated, and it's on us to make that happen. So I encourage you to continue searching for that job as Nate did it, and all of us are doing it in our everyday. Look for what you wanted and reach out. You are not alone. And fortunately, we have these new opportunities through the government with these services. So use them, visit this office, be open. That will be my message.
Yeah.
Collaboration is important, and we need to keep working together.
Yes. As they say, a mind is like a parachute, and it works way better when it's open. Sarah, wrap this up for us, and then we're going to get to some Q&A. And what would be your final thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to encourage everyone, if you've ever asked somebody with disabilities to just reach out, just call me, just let me know you need help. Be aware that communication is one of the 3 criteria for autism, communication difficulties. And I really live this. I mean, I have very intelligent, eloquent, literate kids. I am writing their emails and their texts for them all the time. They just are unsure. There's just an uncertainty of what's expected. The idea of just reaching out to a teacher for extra help or just popping in for business hours, it's never happened. So as employers or as service providers, please provide many alternative ways to be in touch, whether it's through the chat bot or through, texting. I don't know what works for everyone, and many people on the line maybe can chime in, but saying just reach out is the #1 barrier to getting help sometimes.
Bingo. Speaking of barriers, I've just been told my presentation in Vernon has been moved from 12:30 to 12. So I'm going to leave at 11:45 and Louise is going to take over. But we got 15 minutes for me, and then Louise will take it on from there. Let's start with some of the questions. And I saw a bunch in there. I want to start with the one that I saw earlier, and that's about people with disabilities working at Neil Squire. I won't be able to list them all. Our executive director is Dr. Gary Birch. He's a quadriplegic. Our second in command, Dr. Greg Pick, is a paraplegic. They both have been in the organization for close to 20 years. The lady that is our administration manager was born in Kenya with polio. We have a gentleman in Kelowna that is blind. We have a whole host of different people with different disabilities and abilities that work at Neil Squire because we believe in that firmly. Let's talk about one of these other questions I saw. Louise, feel free to speak out if you've got a question already. I'm just going through them now.
Here to support you, Nate. I think another question was around disclosure. So then maybe just to try and get either Sarah or Judith's perspective on disclosure. I know Yat did already talk to that a little bit, but what are your thoughts around that, Judith? Can you provide us a little bit of a bit more detail if possible?
I think I've been so connected with the people that is integrated in my team, in my company, that actually when they start working and receiving the training, each of our employees, they are open to say, this is my disability. And I that helped me completely because in that assessment, I support them more in the transition and I find a better position for them. So in this case, for me, it's been a benefit when they feel comfortable and they are open. And I would encourage if you had a disability, when you are in that comfort zone, be open to an employer and mention it. I work better alone. I feel more comfortable working in the morning. I feel more secure and more relaxed in the afternoons. Mention, because that will help you to be successful in what you're doing. I really learned, but it's more easy for me because I remember everything. Please give me everything in writing. That part that Sarah was talking about communication. So people, they mentioned, I need to see my schedule. I need reminders, So maybe I can help you 1 week, but I will make you responsible for the next one. I say, here is the schedule for this week. That will be repetition. So you need to be in charge, It's 50-50. So yeah. I think that to be open about what are you working to improve in your own mental health or circumstance or disability, it's good. It's good to have that conversation. Of course, for that, you need to have that feel secure,
Yes.
So
wonderful
it's both
answer.
ways. Yeah.
Wonderful answer. You're exactly right. And a lot of that would affect many people, would benefit from some of the things that you talked about. And many people may take those tasks upon themselves and be able to write those lists and do that. some other people might need some help and some guidance with that. Excellent answer, Judith. I saw Yat answered this question on the fly. Accessible Employers has some wonderful resources. We could be here till this time next week going through the resources. It is fantastic. Also a practical toolkit. Hello from Milou. Yes, thank you, Milou. You're doing great work out there. Is there a way to access an OT to try different technology prior to finding a job? I have a visual impairment that makes using a computer impossible at the moment. I've been told I need to secure a job first, which I am unable to do without being able to use a computer. Okay, not an easy answer. If you are not connected to a funding source, currently like WorkBC, you can apply, sign up for distance computer comfort at Neil Squire, and that may be a way for us to show you how to use some assistive technology for somebody that's low vision or blind. There's many factors there, and I may not have all the answers for you. If you are connected to a funding source like WorkBC and your visual impairment impacts job search or a training program they're put you through, that's exactly what the WorkBC assistive technology program is going to do. WorkBC is going to refer you to us at Neil Squire /assistive technology services, and we're going to do an assessment by an OT. We're going to understand how your vision impairment would impact activities that may be associated with WorkBC, and may be able to provide the tools that you need, and we have for many people. I don't want to make any promises because I don't know many details about your situation, but that's exactly what that program is for. And in the again, if you're not connected to a funding source, the Distance Computer Comfort Program, we may be able to gift you a used and refurbished by us laptop or desktop to take that training. Nate, it's Rhoda. How are you serving people in the Surrey Delta Langley area? The WorkBC Assistive Technology Services Program is all over British Columbia. There's 102 WorkBC centers around the province. Go into any of those and they'll be able to help you. Victoria, you and I are going to connect afterwards. Any other questions that you see that we should be answering? We talked about carving. Talia's story, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. How can you measure success in creating an inclusive culture or system? Mike, how would you answer that? How do you measure success when we're talking about an inclusive culture or system? And yeah, I want you to answer that too, please.
You know, there's a lot of literature on diversity audits and like diversity and inclusion audits or accessibility audits. Oftentimes you can measure success quantitatively, but really what's even more impactful is like the qualitative, the more personal experiences are more kind of like the important success measures for an inclusive culture or system. So many organizations like ours, like if an employer wanted for us to audit their DEI, how inclusive their culture or system is, we have a checklist. We go and visit them. We have a conversation with the employers. But I think the best way to measure it is like individual interviews with the specific employees. It's really what you're looking for. That question is a very good question. It's a very broad question as well. Like it's something that we can definitely like unpack even further, but that's the basic answer to it.
Yeah.
To add on to what Mike had just mentioned, at Accessible Employers, we have the Pledge to Measure. And the Pledge to Measure identifies 2 data points. Number 1 is the number of people on staff who identify as having a disability. And number 2, the number of senior leaders who identify as having a disability. The purpose of asking these 2 questions is so that we get a better understanding for that employer, so they create a benchmark for themselves year over year, the number of people that they have on staff who self-identify, and as well as recognize how many of them are senior leaders. Because at Accessible Employers, we work with many employers, but we work also very closely with senior leaders, because we believe that when we address attitudinal barriers in senior leadership and we acquire that buy-in, it is very much more likely that organization will hire people with disabilities. So for example, when a senior leader shares their disability status, perhaps at ICBC or at BCLC or TransLink, this person powerfully combats the stigma disabled people face, and that these senior leaders have built a successful career despite the barriers, and they create a courage and make space for others to speak about this as well too. So we have used this survey for 4 years now. This year, we have 55 employers participate, 94,000 people participated, and 11,000 BC employees self-identified as having a disability, and 543 BC senior leaders self-identified. So we're seeing growth. Organizations who are part of it, especially being part of it for year 1 to now year 4, see their benchmark, see whether they're growing. If they're growing, that means they must have, of course, done something differently, have done something like, for example, providing more job accommodations, or perhaps to create a safe space for self-disclosure. If they've dipped, that's an opportunity for them to review what they've done over the past year or year and a half to see what changes have been made when it comes to policies. Has it been a huge increase in turnover? Has the turnover been predominantly people with disabilities? So they start being able to use that benchmark to ask those specific questions.
Bingo. As usual, you have excellent answers, panel. Very good. Okay, there's some tough questions in here, and we may not be able to give you all the perfect answers either. Rhoda asks, how do you deal with employers who say they don't want to hire people, they have to babysit in the workplace? I'm going to chime in on that a little bit. First of all, education. Second of all, what kind of roles do they need filled? Third, what experience have they had where they felt they had to babysit somebody in the workplace? That would be what I would say. Sarah, let's hear from the perspective of a mom with 4 kids on the spectrum that's also worked with people with disabilities and barriers as a physiotherapist. What would you say to that?
I mean, the word is just offensive. So let's start with maybe having somebody who needs extra support. It may be the case somebody may need extra support and some people may not. So let's just individualize. Let's take a chance. Let's meet some people. Let's get out there and try it.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like that. Offensive. That's exactly what that word is. So that's a complicated situation, and the word babysit has terrible negative conversations in this discussion. Let's give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt where maybe they've worked with somebody that required more support. There's organizations on the call today that do something called supportive employment, where the organization comes as a job coach to learn the job and then teach the client how to do the job. And they're always there from that support standpoint. Louise, anything to add to what Sarah said and what I've said about that question from Rhoda, which is an excellent question, Rhoda?
Yeah, and I think, I'm a firm believer that sustainment or sustainability is just as important as the client, having a carved placement, right? So it's like, we want that client to be successful, right? Success really is measured on, for the client is measured on, how are we transitioning them into the workforce in a way that is, not overwhelming, and they're getting the support that they need. And there is that job coaching, as you said, Nate. And what does that job coaching look like? Well, that will depend on the need of the client, right? That may be that we, meet with the client every single day until they feel comfortable and we start to step away a little bit towards independence. But I think that job coaching piece is so important to ensure that the client is, feeling that level of support. At the same time, it's all about empowerment. I think I heard that a few times on the call today. It's all about that empowerment so that the individual knows that they have the skills, they're in the right place, we're there to journey with them for a while. But by the time we start to step away a little bit as service providers, that they have the skills and the confidence and the relationship with their leaders to be able to ask for the help that they might potentially need.
Yeah, bingo. Okay, so everybody, I have to jet, and I'm so sorry. I'm in Vernon today, and I'm going to the Vernon Jobapalooza, the best name ever for a job fair. And my presentation, which was going to be at 12:15, has been moved up to 12. So here's the last question I'm going to be a part of. Louise and the rest of the panel are here till noon. And there's two people that I think will be perfect to answer that. First of all, Yat, and then Judith. And it is, Arvin says, and Yat, you and I have talked about this over the years, how do we ensure that inclusion does not become a box ticking exercise, but is instead woven into the fabric of an organization? And before you answer that, thank you, everybody. Excellent questions today. Thank you for participating in this. This is a job that we'll keep working on for as long as it takes. And it is getting better. And I believe that. I've seen it over my 9+ years, and we're making progress. Thank you for your participation today. And yeah, I leave it with you. And thanks, everybody. Really a pleasure to be part of this today.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you, Nate. And a round of virtual applause for Nate before he goes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take good care, everybody.
To answer that question, to ensure that inclusion is woven into the DNA for the organization and employers, it starts from the top, as I mentioned, is senior leadership buy-in, ownership buy-in for smaller businesses, recognizing, folks like Judith, who is so involved and entrenched in their community and openly advocating to hire people with disability, is part of that DNA for that organization. Other things that are not like checkboxes include striking up employee resource groups, ensuring that folks whom are in different communities, whether they are Indigenous, whether they are in the disability community, all have an opportunity to speak up and to be part of different sessions and be part of different groups, so they can share some of the challenges that they go through in the workplace, and then share upstream with senior leadership. Addressing attitudinal barriers, providing training, and also having sign language interpretation at events or captioning without being asked are some of the opportunities that employers can take that are not just checkboxes, but are living and breathing the values, especially the principles, nothing about us without us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, very eloquently said. I love that. Absolutely a really great response. So folks, just to do a little bit of, we've got 10 minutes to go, so we will do our best to be able to go through the remainder of the questions. Certainly, Marissa, I would love to connect with you on this question, actually. So WorkBC client that's been told I need to find a job on my own. That definitely is not, just want to address this very quickly, it's definitely not something that we want to portray as WorkBC providers. I will reach out to you actually at the end of this call just to gather a little bit more information around that. So certainly anybody that does have any questions relating to the WorkBC providers, we can definitely connect at the end. So Gary basically mentioned that self-employment may be an option for some. Check Small Business BC for starting a business as well. Yeah, are you able to talk to that a little bit around the self-employment piece?
I think, Small Business BC has many resources for this, especially for a smaller business in British Columbia. I have a few contacts and folks whom I can share in terms of their contact for more information. They'll be the better persons to speak about this.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm just so from my partner who's joining my work has told me to find a new job because they don't want to accommodate me for my invisible disability anymore. This is from Jasper. My unwritten accommodation is reduced. And so they're just, sorry, I'm just trying to scan this. My work also has virtually no HR department to address this. So yeah, that's a really good question, Jasper. So from what I'm understanding, it sounds that you're not necessarily finding an employer, your employer is not really supporting you through this disclosure. Judith, I think you might have touched on this a little bit, but can you just talk a little bit about, you know, if an individual was to come forward and say, look, this is a disability that I need to address, would you be at all possible to accommodate? What would your thoughts be on how would you do that? How would you go about that process?
It is important that he feels secure first, and he has that trust that you will be open to receive have that conversation with him or with that with the person. Something that also helped me in that process was to connect with the case manager or the coach employer that have assigned and ask how I can provide better support. I communicate with them once a week and I say, you know, this is what we're doing, this is how we work, I noticed this, how I can support with that integration. So I had conversation also with the agency and with the person to say, I noticed that you're being a little nervous about that. What is your feeling? So, and he's not that open to mention, you know, I really feel anxious about like these reports. I feel that these people calling me too much. Like if they are not that like feeling that secure yet, I reach out to the agency and I say, I will notice this. What will be the best way that I can support in that transition? And it's something that is manageable, or is there better another fit or another company for this person? So it's like to connect with both. And also sometimes to have a coffee time with the agency and with the person to see how you've been feeling, how has been this for you. It is in your values, like what are your values? How do you see yourself? Like have that open conversation. Maybe you don't have the time, but maybe a call, you know, for the coffee will be also good. That is what is working in our case.
Absolutely. And I love that, Judith, because I think it really just circles back to what both you and Sarah have said. It's, you know, communication. I think you touched on this, Sarah, really around, you know, sometimes every individual is going to effectively communicate in a different way. So like you said, Judith, building that trust to be able to understand what that communication looks like, and then providing the individual a safe place for you to be able to come forward and say, you know, what do you need, right? And I think trust is a big piece, right? Having that open communication, understanding. And again, that's part of that sustainability within their employment that supports them moving forward. Yes, love
something that I would like to add to that is in that period of time, you recognize what this person is really capable of. So you mention and you empower that the skills that you already recognize in this person. And also to be mentioned that nobody is perfect, that we are here to grow and support each other, that also open that space of trust. Absolutely. Recognizing their skills and what you see the good that they are being doing for the company. And also mention, of course, nobody is perfect, you know, and it's really important to recognize the disability and also the temperament or personality of the person. Because sometimes we cannot miss. You are here because you are valuable, because you can do this job. But everybody had different temperaments and different personalities. So also that can help.
I love that. I love that, because I think that truly talks to what diversity is all about, right? I think if we all had our own unique abilities that are measured on what we think is a unique ability, does that make sense? We're all the same, but it, you know, really what diversity is about is that we all bring individual strengths to the workplace. And it's finding those employers that can say, these are areas that we can develop. We're not really going to focus on those areas as much, but we're really going to focus on what they can bring as abilities, as strengths, and we're going to empower them to keep doing that, right? That is what diverse workplaces is all about. So yeah, I love that, Judith. Thank you so much. Thank you. so for Christian, so I think, let me just go back down here 1 second. So IPS program supports individuals with mental illness to obtain and maintain competitive employment and help provide structure and purposeful activity while enhancing self-esteem and social belonging for all clients. Absolutely, all significant contributors to recovery, and I'm glad to be an advocate. And yeah, I love that actually, Christian, because I think, you know, something that we're actually doing at WorkBC is peer support, which I love, right? So many of the individuals, you know, they've got barriers, but they might be more socially isolated within their communities and they don't have that peer support. So how can we think about getting them together? How can we enhance their social sense of belonging? Again, that's the confidence piece that will support them transition into, like you said, Sarah, volunteerism, unpaid work experience, even for a short time, leading into paid employment, right? So I think all of those pieces are really, really important. Great point, Christian. Thank you so much. So yes, so guys, I just want to thank everybody for such a wonderful panel. I think it's been a very organic conversation, and I think we've had great opportunities to hear some valuable insight from not only the employers, but from the service providers. And also for all the participants that have been here today. I think it's been wonderful. I will reach out to some individuals individually to be able to kind of discuss any WorkBC related questions. And I just wanted to thank everybody for the opportunity to be here today. I think it's definitely a conversation that we need to really still create in that level of awareness in our communities. And thank you for Yat and Mike and the employers, as well as all of the service providers for being here today, just to keep creating that level of awareness in our communities. We're the change we want to become within inclusion. So I think everybody having that voice to move forward is so important. And as I always say to the clients that I serve, it's hope, right? So, you know, we maintain that level of hope and we advocate as much as we can on behalf of them to the employer communities to be able to highlight on their strengths and talents that we can see as service providers. So without further ado, thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. It's been a wonderful event. And I look forward to hearing from you all soon. Thank you so much.